guys, thank you very much for listening, tuning in. A special thank you to Sarah Breslin for coming on last week. Very interesting talk about gut health and colonics and wellness and looking after ourselves. And she, during the pandemic, sorry, she set up a business to do with gift for all cards, kind of a place to kind of have some money put aside into a card for your wellness, to look after yourself, to get a massage or a facial, whatever it might be. And it's a great idea, and it's Sarah was a really great guest, and we've got some lovely feedback from people, especially her family, which I expected, to be honest. They're a pretty class act, the whole lot of them. Subscribe to our YouTube channel if you wouldn't mind. That would be great. We kind of hit a landmark last week on the numbers, so we want to keep going and getting it across there. And I know a lot of people are also listening on Spotify, which is equally as good. It's just important for people to listen, I suppose, and to just get the word out there, and having these, because it's fun for me in the sense that there's fascinating people coming on. Um, Obviously, I pick the guests, and they are people who I want to talk to, and I want to hear about what they do. So I get to listen to every episode, and be in it, and that's great. But if you dip in and out of it, or you listen to every episode, it doesn't matter. It's completely up to you, but it's all very, very helpful for us, and it makes us want to continue doing what we're doing, myself and John. So I'm just turning my microphone towards me so it makes more sense. So obviously, I hope everyone is good as well. It's middle of summer, and the weather's, well, it's okay. It's warmer, which is all positive. And I can see people are going on their holidays within Ireland, and posting their photos, and that's it's great to see that people are able to be out and about after what's going on, and to be able to kind of enjoy the beautiful country that we live in, I suppose. So, as you can see, if you are watching us on YouTube, I am. It's a solo week for me this week. The reason I wanted to do it, because I've been in a low period, um, and it kind of hit hard last week. I'm recording this on Thursday, so it's kind of, you'll be listening to this 6 days later, but it kind of hit hard the week before that, where um it kind of yeah, it crept up at me, maybe not the right expression. It kind of came on when I'll talk about the reasons and the feelings that you get when one's coming, and what you need to do to kind of not quite bat it away, but at least be able to sit with it. And it's important for me to talk about it, because if I'm going to do a podcast about mental health, if I'm going to have guests on and I'm going to ask them about their mental health and their experiences and stuff, it's just as important for me to talk about mine. I've spoken about mine on this all the time. I've talking about giving you stories that happened, and when I had the first breakdown, and when the stuff I went through after with anxiety, and I've talked about all that. But it's also important for me to continue to do so, because I don't want it to my kind of issues and my battles, or whatever you want to call them, are always there. And I don't want to be that person who's almost kind of living an Instagram life, and like everything's grand for me, but I'm bringing on these guests to discuss personal issues that they're very brave to talk about. So I want to be just as open as they have been. And I set this up for that, so that's what it's about. um it got me thinking a bit, and I've heard this, or read this somewhere, where they compare, Sisyphus, the Greek mythology, the myth of Sisyphus, where he cheated death twice, I think. But he cheated death, and his punishment was to continually push a large boulder up a hill, and every time it got nearly the top, it rolled back down, and he started again. And that I would compare that some ways in to relation to depression and to anxiety, where you will always, like, you have to fight it. There's no point in, you can't. I'm not going to say give up. Again, it's kind of tricky territory to talk about, because people have had it worse than I have. But for me, and how I've come along and how far I've come and taking medication and keeping myself physically fit and trying to educate myself about it. I feel like I can't give up on it. So what I'm talking about when I talk about Sisyphus is that I'm constantly pushing that boulder up the hill. And when you get to that top of the hill and the boulder's nearly at the at the lip of the of the cliff, um that's the moment when you're feeling all right, you're feeling good, like, um and it's probably not a good analogy in that sense, and the fact that what you haven't quite got to the top, but that's the point. Will you ever get it to the top? Um, you can certainly try, and you certainly keep going, like the myth. But in that is the drive, the encouragement that you get from constantly, continuously trying, and that's what kind of, I suppose, this podcast is about me coming out and saying what the story is, and the comparison between the lows, depression, and something like uh, a continual fight against something, and that's what it is, and look, I accepted that a few years ago, but it took me a long time to get to that point. But you get to it and you accept it, and then you realize these are the kind of cards you've been dealt, and I'm stronger in some areas than some people maybe, and I'm weaker in other areas, and that's just life. Like, that's not even about depression and anxiety. That's just about life in general. So it's okay to be weaker, or feel that you're weaker, or to feel that your strength isn't quite there in certain areas. Weaker, again, that's my poor use of English. It's not a weakness, but it's something that you feel is at the time you're feeling particularly low. I want to point out, I'm sorry, I'm not looking at the camera more. I find it very strange staring into that lens. So I'm looking at myself on the screen just to avoid looking straight at you in the camera. Um, I've kind of felt it coming on the Tuesday night. So we had been, I think I'd been training, and then we went to the recovery rooms in Athlone, which I gave a shout out to last week, and that was great. We had a bit of crack. There's four of us went from the gym, but I got home and I was a little bit. I felt good in the sense my body felt good because I was after doing the session, and getting, like, a bit of recovery time. But I was feeling a bit anxious and a bit annoyed about something. But couldn't quite put my finger on what the something was. It was just an annoyance and an irritation, and whatever was. It didn't matter what I looked at on TV or looked at on YouTube or whatever it might be. The irritation was there and the annoyance was there, and that obviously prompts the anxiety to join in. Like, come on, jump on board here. We've got him this time. And I went to bed that night and I was tired and I slept. So there was no lack of sleep, because that's such a huge, such an important thing when it comes to your mental health, to sleep, to anybody, because everybody can relate to that. Actually, the whole idea of the lack of sleep and how you think differently once you're up the next day and maybe you get 4 or 5 hours sleep. Everybody can relate to that. But when the anxiety and the irritation is there on top of that, it becomes a whole kind of another ball game. So I got up the next day on the Wednesday, and I was really, really pissed off. I was really, I kind of didn't want to do anything. There was a this kind of creep of tiredness coming over me, where it was more. I think at the time it was more mental tiredness, the mental effort of the night before, and carrying that anxiety to bed and the irritation and stuff. Um, you slowly start to realize, and at least I did, on the Wednesday morning, that this was going to be a bit more than just an off day. It was going to be a bit more than just me being annoyed at whatever it was. Someone on the TV said something that I disagreed with. Whatever, we've all been there, and I think I got that morning. I kind of knew, and I went in to train and do some CrossFit and that, and I did not want to be there, in the sense of nothing to do with anybody else, the other people in the training, nothing to do with the training even, because I know how important that is to me. But I just didn't want to talk to people, didn't want to look at people, didn't want to have to deal with it, in any kind of serious way. But you go in and you do what you have to do. It's a need, it's a must for me to do those kind of things. And what happens then is, it comes. There's this thing about we talk about depression and anxiety and the mental, exhaustion, and mental exhaustion is horrible, and we've probably all been there again, where we've had that experience, and it's worse for me, at least. It's worse than a mental, or sorry, a physical tiredness. The mental tiredness is awful, because what I like to do is read a book, or watch a film. But if you're in that headspace, it is difficult to do it. Particularly if you're reading something kind of heavy, which I was at the time, and I'll talk about that in a bit. And you try and find something that'll be cheer you up, or calm you down, or whatever you need to do. But that's hard. It's hard to find those things when you're in that mood. And it's kind of like on the muscles. Sometimes you feel like it's kind of this angry flu-like symptom, where there's nothing, cold. It's not a stuffed nose. It's not a headache. It's none of that. Your just muscles feel tired. They don't feel achy as such, like people get when they get the flu. They get real achy muscles, and the experience of that we know. But there's this heaviness to it. It's so hard to put into words. That's the problem with certain elements of depression and anxiety and lows, is that sometimes very difficult for the people going through it to put into words. And obviously we need to put it into words to explain it to our doctors, or our therapists. So for me, like, that's what I think of it, as an angry flu. And when it's just like this weight, this anchor within you is pulling you down, and all your muscles they're being kind of stretched in a way, beyond anything you can do. So obviously, people are going to listen to it and say, "Well, why did you go training?" I understand that, like, point of view, but for me, the training is very important. Um, for sleep, obviously, is one thing, but it's also it's just for me. That's what I like to do. If I sit at home on the day that I'm feeling really down, like, it's going to be extra worry on top of it, because not only will I be worrying at home, I'll also miss a gym session, and that to me is not good enough, because I want to be consistent in my training, and be consistent going into the gym, where it essentially is the happy place for me. Like, that's the place where I like to go and enjoy, uh, you know, even just enjoy talking to people, and that's obviously taken away as well. But normally, I like to go in and talk to people and train and things like that. And then, with all the tiredness on top of itself, you've got physical tiredness, mental tiredness. You've got the not worthy of anything. So as I go into the gym, I know, the symptoms, and I know that going in there, not to expect 100% that I can do. So say you were lifting 100 kilograms on a deadlift, okay? You're not going to get that. Like, and well, look, I shouldn't say that, because I'm sure people can do it. I'm not going to get that. I know if I go in there and try and lift 100 when I'm feeling really, really tired and anxious, and not really wanting to be there, deep down, not wanting to be there, if you know what I mean. And then trying to lift it, I won't be able to do. Won't get it off the ground. So I have to realize that I have to take it down to 50% or 70% or whatever it is. There's You have to get that into your head when you're going in there, that you're not going to be able to give what you give. Unfortunately, it's hard when you start thinking of how useless you are, and you're not worthy of anything, and you're not strong, and you're crap at pull-ups, and all those things that come along with that journey. Again, people are probably saying, "Why do you go in there? Why do you go in there?" And it's the same. It's the same answer all the time. But I think, I started to think like this podcast was crap. I was like, no, like last week I was, well, what am I going to do now? I have no guests. I don't want to talk to anyone. So how am I going to get any guests on? I'd come to the conclusion that I was going to make this, a solo one. And I was really struggling with it. I was thinking, like, I just wrote this morning, so it's kind of put together, but I had it in my mind, I guess. So it's not completely off the cuff, but yeah, I just thought this podcast is crap. The layout of it is terrible. The guests are the only good thing about it. My input isn't worthy of anything. Um, I was looking through some questions and stuff for another project that we're going to be doing in a couple of weeks, and I was thinking, sure, who's going to want to listen to this crap? It's everything piling on top of everything, and the main target is yourself, and you're just battering and battering away. And there's another part of it where you worry about things getting out of your control. That is difficult too. You think, you know if you talk about the podcast, if you talk about the gym, because it's being stripped back a little bit, like your ability to do it to to 100% is stripped back. How could you not be thinking that this is brutal? Like, I'm terrible at all this. Like, it's impossible. So your worry about those things is so intense that you're almost like, what am I doing here? Like, I'm really struggling. There's no point in me, doing the podcast anymore. What am I going to do then? Or like, I don't have a job. There's all these kind of things just piling on top of you, and I think it's like a human nature thing that we can all relate to these ideas. But the problem is when it comes to a law, all these ideas come at the same time, and it's very very difficult for anybody to deal with it in a way. Like, I've been through therapy. I know the good parts of therapy that I took away, and I know the bad parts that I kind of disregarded. Um, and I try to remember them in the times when I am struggling, but it is hard. It's like all this information, these fabulous guests that I've had on, and stuff that they've shown me or talked to me about, and it's all there for me. I just need to kind of dig into it, but at the time you feel so useless, and it is pretty awful. I'm gonna just give a. I'm gonna have a drink of water first, actually, so you can watch me do that. And now I'm gonna read out the advert so we can get back into it. So, really should have this off by now. Fusion Training Center, Monksland, Athlone, a place to train in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, kickboxing, martial arts, and CrossFit. A great atmosphere with experienced coaches and a real sense of community. If you want to join the team, find us on Facebook at Fusion Training Center or drop in for a chat. Fusion Training Center, train like a warrior. Obviously, we know we're training in there now, and there's new members coming in. And look, the way Martin's been running things is pretty amazing. And me and Martin have a running slagging battle going on all the time, and it's great fun. But like, I admire what he's done with the business and what he's had to do to adjust the things, and he's done it very well. So, if you want to do something new, give him a ring. So it was that whole thing that I kind of turned around after a day or so, and I thought, right, stick to the routines. The whole thing about, like I just mentioned, about the gym and things like that. It was about sticking to the routines, and dragging myself into the gym if I, excuse me, if I had to. There was a morning when I got up, and it was I think it was the Sunday morning, and I went out for a run. I go out early. I went out for a run, and it was like I was running through treacle. It wasn't like, not painful or anything like that, but it was just so tough. And talk about having to like really dig deep. But when you've got this kind of, I like to listen to a podcast and I'm out on the run or something like that. But whatever was on, I've got this mantra in my head, and I'm just repeating the idea of get to the 12 kilometers, get to the 12 kilometers. Now the reason, and people again will probably say, why don't you just give yourself a break and just rest? If you're feeling that tired, just chill out. I've talked about this on the program before, and people will understand if they have run, for leisure, I suppose. Um, they'll understand that runner's high, and I needed that so much. And it's it's a beautiful sensation. But when you come in, when you're on your low, and you come in and you've got your little runner's high, but at the same time, in the back of your mind, you're still going, "Oh, that was a crap run." It's this constant badgering that you do to yourself. And I did it this morning again. I went out for a run, and I wasn't going to record this episode till Saturday because I kind of, I didn't feel up for it. But again, it's that trying to be very, very transparent with my mental health on here. And, uh, I don't know if I sound particularly low in this podcast. I hope people aren't just going, "Oh God, I can't listen to this," because I think it's important. But I also wanted to be very, very myself and how I feel now. And I wanted to do the podcast. So I think the run helped me in that sense, that I could come in, write the podcast, like I said, I did this morning, and immediately turn around a half an hour later and record it. And then knowing that I can take the weekend off then, of course. We have got, by the way, I'll talk about it a little later in the show. We have got guests, a lot of guests lined up. It was ridiculous. I had no guests. I sent out some emails, and then they all got back to me at the one time. So now I'm gonna have to shuffle them around a bit. But we're really fortunate in that way, the way people have stepped up to the plate and come on. But yeah, so I had that like running in treacle, and but it was the idea of running to sleep as well. You know, the endorphins will kick in, but they'll be gone in the evening, and then that's the time for you to turn out the lights and go off to sleep. And I like to go to bed at 9. I bring my iPad in, I watch some music on YouTube, and it unwinds me, you know. And I needed it. I needed it just as much when I was doing you know, going through the low. And even the football that was on, I was really not. I couldn't really get into it. I kind of missed it. I was here and there, you know. I had the book in my hand, had the iPad on my lap, and the football on the TV. And there's a weird alignment between a low and a high, a bipolar low and a bipolar high, in that there's an intensity in the way you're thinking that you can't focus on one thing or the other. And I remember talking about this before. I don't know if it was on the podcast actually, but it happened a couple of years ago, and I had Train to Busan on the TV, which is it's a Korean film, so subtitles. So I would have needed to be paying attention. I had a notepad on my lap. I had the iPad on a MMA fight, and it's just pure information that you can't possibly take in, but it's all there in front of you. And I think that's what where that's where the low and the high kind of align with each other, where there's this complete mess in your mind, and everything in front of you is just noise. But it seems like that's where your comfort zone is at the time. So I did have a bit of that. Um, so when I talked a bit about, you know, the kind of difficulties in going to places and the difficulties in going to the gym, um like small talk is like the work of the devil when you feel like this. And because I like to be kind of polite, you know, when people are in there. Some people I know in there, I'll chat away to, you know, on normal occasions, and then there's some people I don't know, but I say hello to, obviously, you know, just to be nice and have some manners, basic manners. But it's the threat of small talk. It's not like if I see Martin coming in, I can chat to Martin. Even in a low, I can chat away to Martin. Or if I see, you know, Vinny coming in, and I can chat away to Vinny. There's no problem. But it's when I don't know someone as well, and they come up to approach me, and it's like I don't know what to say. And what happens is, in a blind panic in my mind, it's just like just, you know, those pictures of the brain. I think it's Mind, actually, the website Mind, to do a mental health, but it's just got scribbles all within the head. That's what it is. You can't. It's weird. You can't summon up the simple words like, "Are you going out with the weekend?" You know, it's just something like that that we normally have small talk about, or "You looking forward to today's workout?" Things like that. You can't summon them up. And even when I'm downstairs sometimes, and like I know Anne better than, I know Anne so well, like more than most people, because we've lived together for so long, and we're close, and I know she's my landlady, but we're friends, you know, more importantly. And sometimes in the kitchen with her, and I can't get any words to, I can't form any sentences or ideas that I can get out there. And I wonder if that's a comfort thing though, because if I have my mom and my dad if I need them at any time, and I know that I can be quiet around them if I need to be, because you just know it's your parents. You don't they're not they don't expect anything of you. Like I don't expect anything of them. So if we're sitting there and we're quiet and the TV on or the radio's on, whatever it might be, that's great. That doesn't matter. But I'm wondering if it's the same with Anne, that I know her so well that I don't need to kind of summon that small talk. And it's difficult. So when I go into the gym, is I go up to the top. There's bays that are separated now. There's 12 of them. So when you go in, because of the restrictions, you know, the distance, I go up to there's a bay up the very top, away from the main floor, the very, very top, up by the bathrooms, the toilets. And that's where I go. Now, Martin knows that's where I go. And most of the time he's grand. He leaves me to it. Sometimes I can't go there for reasons of, you know, whatever the workout might be. I'm restricted in that corner. I don't have the space for it. But I have noticed what he's done in the last week, and I will tell him this. If he doesn't listen to this podcast, I will tell him that I appreciate what he does, because I know he's doing it for my own good, but he'll move me into the center of the floor, not the center, you know what I mean, but into the, where the main group is training, and he'll put me in one of the bays there. Now, he's not expecting me to start talking to people or anything like that, but I should ask him really what his expectancies are. But what it seems to me is that he wants to. He knows I'm in a low. I talked to him about it. He wants to just have me as part of the group, to feel part of the group, because I am. I've been there, 4 years or whatever. But just to be part of that particular group and to train with those people, and push myself. And I think it helps when we're in the middle of the workout, when we don't have to worry about small talk, where I can push myself off people. I can look at people and use them as a marker of what I should be doing and how quick I should be doing, or whatever it may be. But I do know he does it for that reason. Well, I think he does it for that reason, or he just does it to annoy me. It could be either. um it could easily be either with Martin, but I do think he's doing it, because he is good like that with me. He knows when to kind of push and when to kind of leave off. But I think he's done for me in the last week. I think he's trying to make sure that remain part of the group, and be in there. And I think that's so important. And there's a weird, kind of there's a weird kind of thing in there at the moment, just the way I'm acting, in that I don't feel like I deserve to have a smile on my face. I'm a good actor at this point, but sometimes it is difficult to smile, and I do, like I say hello, I try to smile at somebody, because it's weird. Otherwise, he's saying hello without a smile. But it's that idea of just, you're not worthy of a smile at the moment, or stay in your lane, kind of a thing. That you're in a low, you can't smile, you can't have any sort of enthusiasm for anything. So just shut up. And I look, it's, again, it probably sounds silly to some people, that, like, why would you be thinking about that, about a smile? Why would we thinking about anything? Because that's the way the mind works when you're in a low, when you have high levels of anxiety. Stupid things pop up, and it, it's so, you do, I think you do lose control, and you feel like you lose control of everything. You don't, but you feel it. And even things outside your jurisdiction, no, but things outside your space and outside your life, you feel like you lose them. I was reading a really interesting book, which I kind of brushed upon earlier on. Actually, I'll take another drink of water. It's very unprofessional. But I was reading a book by James Rhodes called Fire on All Sides. Now, James Rhodes is a concert pianist who's written a biography before that called Instrumental, where he talks about abuse, and as a child, and the trauma that created, and then how his mental health was impacted to this day. But in this particular book, he talks about what he's on tour. It's kind of like a tour diary, and what he goes through. And sometimes he's feeling great, and he's out there playing Rachmaninoff and Beethoven and Chopin. What's beautiful actually about each chapter, he puts it in a piece you should listen to in, and then I went back and listened to them, and I could kind of, you can kind of click into where he is and what he's talking about, depending on the mood of the piece of music. But he describes his inflation, the inflation of worry, and how everything within his life is worry. If he's going to catch the plane on time, will he have a panic attack on stage? Will his manager be there to? Because he kind of relies on his manager as a, I suppose, as someone who, consigliere, is that the correct way of putting it? But no, but he describes him as, the go-to guy when he is having mental health difficulties, and he kind of, his manager's always on tour with him, so he helps him out. So he talks about that. But then the worry part of it for him is everything outside of that as well. Like, we all could sit there and go, I hope I get the plane, on time. But he's thinking, but what if the plane doesn't have enough fuel in it? And what if we crash into a mountain? There's all these kind of things he worries. He inflates everything beyond, but beyond his own, powers, which is exhausting. And he talks again about trying to sleep and trying to do, he knows the correct diet he should be on, but he's not quite doing it. He says he's never been in a restaurant over like 15 minutes because he just eats and leaves. He doesn't like to sit around like, with, people having a glass of wine and all that. And people want to spend time with him because he's famous within the circle he's in, and people, want to be around people who are famous. And, he's obviously a brilliant musician as well. That goes without saying. But it's a fascinating book, and I could relate to it so much. I finished reading it over the weekend, but I could relate to it so much as I was kind of finishing up about that side of worry and anxiety and feeling, really, really low and really down. Um, and I could really feel for him, but again, I admire his honesty so much. He's written like one biography and one diary. It was kind of a diary, and he's just told everything. He's had no problems. He's had a big court case because the first novel, I won't, or his first biography, I won't go into that, but there's a lot of stuff he's had to deal with, and he's still worrying. And every time he gets a girlfriend, that's an extra worry, and it's panic, panic, panic all over. And it's a fascinating book that, yeah, I could really relate to what he was talking about on that side of things, not obviously on the side of things of touring around Europe playing a piano. Um, and talking about worry, another thing that I found quite draining, and I was really getting pissed off. And I was in the house at the weekend, and the weekend was long. Like, I don't train the weekends. I have a run, but I don't go into a fusion for a session or anything. And they feel, when I'm down. I love living out where I'm living out in the country, but when I'm down, I feel like I'm stuck. Even though I've a bike and all that, like I feel, very sometimes very, very lonely. And I think I felt that at the weekend, and I felt that the weekend was dragging so much. It really, really felt long. And I thought, what am I going to do? I can't do this every weekend. I haven't been. I've been really enjoying my weekends, but again, it's the idea. Like, you forget all that. You just say, well, you disregard that. Well, it doesn't matter if you're enjoying that. You feel terrible now. So I found the weekend quite difficult, but at the same time, I also found it quiet. And sometimes that's what we need. And I certainly needed it because, well, look, we're all sick of the COVID talk, and it's obviously going to be talked about because it's such a massive thing that's happened. But I was really struggling with it. And every time someone mentioned it, I was kind of getting really irritated. And to the point of like biting my tongue, because normally if it's a case of, there's a group of people talking about something and I don't want to talk about it, I'll just distance myself from it. I don't need to talk about it. But what I was doing was I was listening in and taking it on board and then getting really, really annoyed. And it's the there's everybody can have a conversation about whatever they want, but it's, the misinformation that's spreading. Everybody's a doctor. Everybody's a specialist on COVID at this stage. Um, and I don't want to be one of those people because I, I do that. I'm sure with some things where I pretend I know everything about everything. With the Beatles, people probably would say, but I do know when it's time not to talk about stuff because I haven't a clue what I'm talking about. It was very much like Brexit. The talk was just noise, 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 and I just didn't want to hear about it anymore. And I didn't look. I'm very. I'm in a. In, People will know that I'm humble in the sense that if I don't know about something, I will shut up, and I will, if I'm interested, I will go and read up on it. But I will not continue in a conversation about it with somebody maybe know a bit more than me or whatever, whatever it might be. And Brexit and COVID were two things that followed that one after the other, and it really started to kind of grate on me. And last week was grating on me. I was mad to jump in, but I don't want to do that either because it's not in my character, and I don't want to allow this low that I'm feeling at the moment to change my character anyway. That would be well, that'd be ridiculous, really. It'd be a real shame actually for me my character be changed because of a low that I'm experiencing that I know will go away at some point. And that's the thing. It's the grasping at that that thought that it will go away at some point. Um. So what over the weekend I was really trying to kind of lose myself and stuff and trying to get away. Well, I don't know if it was getting away, but it was like I said, I was feeling a bit lonely. I was feeling a bit bored. It was a long weekend, so I thought I try and watch films, but then I started looking through. I have a few films, DVDs, and I was trying to look through, and I was going, God, that doesn't sound like a good idea for now. And I kept doing that with loads of films. But I had recently bought Nomadland, which was if people don't know, won the Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Actress at the Oscars. Um, I don't think enough people appreciate slow cinema, and uh, there's slow cinema is like the title suggests that it goes at a certain pace, and it relies on conversations, maybe beautiful landscapes and cinematography shots like that, um, great performances. It doesn't rely on anything big and bold and smashing things and blowing things up and CGI and all that. So what Nomadland is about Francis McDormand, who maybe has rightly the claim to say she's the best actress that's ever been. She won 3 Oscars now at this point, but her husband passes away, and she basically doesn't have a steady job, so she's in and out of different jobs, and she lives out of her van. So the nomad land being the clues in the title, but she moves around. She meets some people who are also people who live out of their vans or the camper vans, things like that. And a lot of the people, most of the people are non-actors, so they're people who genuinely live out of their vans, and they're on screen talking to the great Francis McDormand. And I was watching that, and I really got lost in it because I allowed it to happen. Whatever, feeling anxious and things like that. I sat there, and I was really absorbed in the by the film and in the film. And slow cinema was just I needed it that day. I had a couple of other films ready to go. Judas and the Black Messiah was one. I knew that wasn't going to relax me, so I thought I should watch this, and I just sat back. And there's one scene in it actually that was really um it was really touching, because this isn't a spoiler or anything like that, because it's just scene. It's not a big scene in the sense of the storyline. But this lady, elderly lady in it, is telling Frances McDormand that she's got a short time to live, and that she starts talking about her time spent traveling in the States, and the animals she's seen, and the birds, and a flamingo just flying right over her head, and going down a river and seeing hundreds and hundreds of swallows' nests on the side of a cliff. And the way she talks about it, that's the life she's lived. And it made me kind of think that was the life that sounds. Look, everybody romanticizes their own life, but the idea that that was her life, to see all those things and be herself all the time, and she didn't need to comply to anything, any rules or whatever regulations there were. She just That was her existence, to go from maybe job to job, seasonal work, and find this way of life that she just adored. And I really got caught up in it. I really got caught up in that scene. It was a very kind of emotional scene. I didn't cry. I will tell you about a moment I did cry in a few minutes, but I didn't cry. But it was. There's a great power in slow cinema, and I think if you are of the anxious variety of person, you should definitely have a look at something like Nomadland, because it's beautiful. And I put out this another thing that was beautiful. Actually, sorry, I'm drinking again. I always get obviously a bit dehydrated after a run. But another thing that was really beautiful, on Monday, I put out a social media post, just a picture of the gym, and just over it, I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was kind of like, I find myself in a bipolar low. I want to, keep turning up, keep training, even if it's only 50%, something like that. And like, I could not believe the amount of support that came back from people, whether they train in Fusion, or whether I just know them, or Facebook friends, Instagram friends, ex guests on this podcast. I was honestly blown away by it. And everybody should know that I was deeply moved, but also highly motivated by each message. And it wasn't just what's remarkable is, fair play to everyone for putting up the thumbs up on the Facebook post, for the heart, for the little emoji hugging the heart. That's a beautiful thing to do. And then you had people messaging underneath that saying, keep going, fair play, all those kind of things. And then you had people messaging me, on my Facebook Messenger or Instagram. I had, you know, people I train with in Fusion just reach out in that way. And I will it's it's kind of like, what's the best way to describe it? Like, I don't know. It's really it was really touching, obviously. That that should be said. But what I found amazing about it, nobody batted an eyelid at the mental health side of things. When they saw me in training afterwards, didn't matter. There was nothing. There's no reaction to it. Nobody. I didn't feel anybody was any different with me. There was no people being standoffish. There was no people. It was like the in the best of ways. It was like that post didn't exist and that my low wasn't there, because we had addressed it. Like when I put the post up and they talked to me, we had addressed it, and that was kind of like enough for you know that was it, and we could go on and keep training. I got a message. I don't want to tell say who the people are, because I haven't asked them permission to mention their name, so I would never do that. I got a voice message from someone who, you know just say, keep going, that they were having a particularly tough time and a particularly tough day, and they didn't want to get up that morning to go for a walk, which they always did. And because of my post and saying that I'm going to get up and do it anyway, they got up and had a walk, and they felt great afterwards. That's no, look, that's just a prompt by me. I take no credit for that. They're the ones that were feeling crap, and they're the ones that got out of bed and went for a walk. I understand that it was just a prompt, but the amazing thing is that person did it themselves. They did that, action, and that's all on them. So fair play to them. I got a message last night from someone. I literally haven't talked to this person maybe in 15 years. I'm friends with them on Facebook, but I haven't talked to them in 15 years. And it was keep going. Um, feel grateful that you can still do what you're doing and things like that. And again, this is people reaching out to you from nowhere, really, like just Facebook friends that are sitting there. You don't interact with anything. I was genuinely touched by it all, and I'm I want, like I say, continually say, I want to normalize this stuff. For me, I don't. This thing isn't for me outside of my own head, which is something. Uh, it's not a thing, This is what I have, or this is who I am. I'm bipolar. I have anxiety, and it's not a thing. I don't carry it around. I don't carry around a sign, but everybody knows, because, well, not everybody, but you know what I mean. If they wanted to know, they just listen to the first two episodes of the podcast, and they'll find out exactly what it is. It's the honor there. Sorry, the generosity, and how much people care. That's the important part. Um, it's amazing. So yeah, I do you ever have that thing in your chest, actually, when you I kind of had it there a minute ago, if you heard me kind of stumble over my words as usual, of you kind of need to release something, you need to cry. So I'd have this, like, a weight in my chest, and I felt this is kind of, you hold everything, people hold everything in. The whole men don't cry thing is nonsense. Just disregard that. It's there's no good that comes from that. If you think, big men don't cry, whatever, that, forget about it. I don't, and look, if you want to believe that, good, go for it. But it's to me, it's complete nonsense. But I on Father's Day, and I want to publicly apologize to my dad, Pierce, for this is the first one I ever missed. I never missed a Father's Day or Mother's Day in my life. And for some reason, maybe it's because I hadn't been in town or whatever, I didn't see any messages or whatever. It's no excuse. I forgot it was Father's Day. So on the morning, I realized, and I rang him, and obviously apologized. But on that day, I I follow James Blunt on Twitter. I think he's a very funny guy. I do. People, he gets a really hard time because of his, maybe his voice or whatever it is. Like I think, I actually think a lot of the things to do with James Blunt, people are confronted with emotions they don't want to be confronted with. Mostly, and I'm sorry if this is sexist, mostly men are don't like it. They don't like that confrontation of something like "you're beautiful" being so open about how much you find that girl attractive. And I think he opens up that kind of uncomfortableness in men where they just don't want to be faced with the fact that some of those things that he's talking about you've all felt, but you didn't want to voice. But he's no problem doing it. That guy was a tank commander in Kosovo. He's seen some stuff. So for him to be able to do what he does now and make all the money, doesn't be successful, and be a a really good songwriter, it to him, he that's the least of his worries. It's just showing some emotion. But there's a story behind this song, actually, and the song is called Monsters by James Blunt, obviously. And so he wrote it when he found out his dad had stage 4 kidney failure. So basically, if he didn't find a match for the kidneys, he would die soon as well. So James Blunt wrote this song. So on Father's Day, he put up that videos. So in the video, James Blunt is singing directly to the camera at the start of the video. He starts tearing up immediately. Clearly not. He's not acting. It's pure emotion. Halfway through it, it pans out, and his dad is beside him. And still, during the making of this video, his dad was still hadn't found a match. After the video was put out, I think it was like a long distance cousin or some relation that they didn't even really know about came to, and they were able to help his father. So I had watched it and I thought, God, that is it's a very very powerful song, but it's more so in the performance. The fact that is in the video, and I just need that came popped into my head. I'd seen it on Father's Day, which was a few weeks ago, and I thought I'll watch that video. I'll so I typed it in, and then realized that all these people had reaction videos to it. And if you don't know what reaction videos are, it'd be basically like me if I was on here watching a video of a song and reacting to the music or the video. And loads of people reactions. But to me, it's a tough listen, right? But I just want to read out the lyrics, because sometimes when I was talking about you know the idea of being able to cry, or trying to cry. I sometimes think that medication and things like that, it stops me from crying. It tries to stop me from being unhappy too. But I think that there's a plug in there that I'd prefer not to have in there. So the lyrics, I have them in front of me here. Okay, so the lyrics are and remember what I'm like. I remember, when I listened to it, watch it, I remember when I went downstairs with my mom when I was a kid, and we were in the house up in Swords, and I went down, and she was still watching TV, so maybe about 11 or half 11, and asked her what would happen if I said, what would happen if you or Daddy died. I had this constant thing. I had the thing I talked about before with fire. I always thought the house was going on fire. Then I had this thing with my father dying or my mother dying. I was constantly worrying. There's no wonder I am the way I am now. But I had this in mind about, if you had this, if you were confronted by the fact that your parents, you know, were they were not like eternal, they didn't have an infinite number of years, um, or finite. Who cares? But you know what I mean. Like if you realize that they're actually going to pass away sometime, and James Blunt was confronted with that. I'll just read some of the lyrics because I think they're really touching, and I think this song and James Rhodes' book have helped me a lot, even though they're very, very heavy. So the lyrics are, "Oh, before they turn off all the lights, I won't read you your wrongs or your rights. The time is gone. I'll tell you good night, close the door. Tell you I love you once more. The time is gone, so here it is. I'm not your son. You're not my father. We're just two grown men saying goodbye. No need to forgive, no need to forget. I know your mistakes and you know mine. And while you're sleeping, I'll try to make you proud. So, Daddy, won't you just close your eyes? Don't be afraid. It's my turn to chase the monsters away. Oh, well, I'll read a story to you. Only difference is this one is true. The time is gone. I folded your clothes on the chair. I hope you sleep well. Don't be scared. The time is gone. So here it is. It goes back into the chorus. It's such a like, even that line, "the time has gone," is it's weird how sometimes the simplest lyrics are the ones that kind of really hit you. So sorry, no. But I think if you haven't seen the video, you haven't heard the song, you should definitely, because his voice in it is, he recorded it on a one take, and the record company wanted him to clean it up a bit of auto tune because it breaks in a couple of parts. But that, he said no, because that was the emotion of the take, and that's why it's the way it is. So yeah, so it's it's been. I'm glad I did this episode because I think it's important to do it. But hopefully I can start moving out of it now, and getting back into um the usual things I enjoy doing, and enjoy doing them rather than just doing them because I need to for myself. We've got some good stuff coming up. Actually, we've got a couple of we've got actually one good episode now that I'm very much looking forward to. It's going to have four former guests on it. Actually, three former guests and a special guest, and we're going to do some questions that I was asked on this podcast before, like, fantasy dinner guests. So I'm going to score the answers that people give me and see who's the winner. I hope to do two episodes of that, because I've got one panel lined up, and I'm hoping to get the other panel, and then maybe merge them at some point. But we'll see how it goes. But I'm looking forward to it. And listen, I want to say thanks to John. I contacted him during the week. I said I just said I wasn't up to a guest this week. Is it cool if we do a solo one? And as John, sees through the bullshit a lot of the time, especially the bullshit in my head, he said, we can. It's our podcast. We can do what we want, and he's right. I can do one of these, and if nobody listens, that's all right. And if loads of people listen, that's brilliant. But thanks, John, for all your work. Thanks to my mom, my dad, my granddad, to Jer and Calvin, for keeping us going. Uh, we're on YouTube. If you would subscribe to our channel, it'd be magnificent, magnificent. Even we're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, podcast platforms, Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Google Podcasts, etc. Um, Thank you to everyone for listening, especially this week. We will be back to regular scheduling this, next week. It's funny. I look back. I think I have the copy here in front of me, so I'm just checking. But I think the last time I did a solo episode was, episode 40, and this is episode 76. So shows you the difference in what's that, like, that's 35 guests in between, which is crazy. But listen, I'm going to head off. Thank you all very much. Thanks to everybody, for listening and all that. So we really appreciate it. We'll be back next week as usual. I hope you all have a lovely week. Thanks for listening. Talk soon. Bye.